Well, Dos, we are away from home today, and we've been welcomed to Sam Newman's beautiful studio. So firstly, Sam, thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure.
We were talking a bit just before, but Don and you, the podcast is going well. You're enjoying it. It's you said Don doesn't do much. You do all of it. Is that true? Is it?
Don does nothing. No, absolutely nothing. He turns up here late on most occasions and has no notes, prepares nothing, and just waits for me to ask him a question, which he never answers, and just goes off on a tangent on his own. So that's why we think it's different. We're not two normal people speaking about daily events. So we're speaking about a man who just speaks about whatever he wants to speak about, whether we're interested or not.
Well, that's why we love you, Sam. The thing about this that we found quite interesting is we were listening to a podcast you did probably 7 or 8 years ago with Mark Howard, and Mark was almost, throughout the podcast, was almost educating you about what podcasting is. But for you now, this is a perfect platform for somebody like yourself that doesn't have, say, TV networks breathing down your neck, and you can actually speak your truth. So you must enjoy the process of podcasting.
Yes, I'll tell you how this started. Mark would be quite right. I had no idea about anything that is electronic or in the new millennium. And I play golf with the ex-St Kilda coach Grant Thomas and ex-footballer, played for North. And we're driving down to play golf down to where we are members, down on the Mornington Peninsula. And we're chatting in the car. It's about an hour and 20 minutes to drive. And we're chatting about people who drive badly and things that we were mentioning as we're driving along. And he said, we should do a podcast. I said, about what? He said, about exactly what we've been chatting about all the way down. I said, yeah. I said, well, we should, if you think it's a good idea, we should do a pilot. He said, well, we've done one. And I said, have we? He said, yep, I've recorded this on the phone, all the trip down. So that's how it started. So then we got Mike Sheehan in as well to add a bit of, I don't know, I'm not sure what to add with Mike, but anyhow, he came on, and they were about as polarised as two people you can get, Mike Sheehan and Grant Thomas. And so that's why we did it. And then I dressed myself up. Grant's a very top businessman and got a IT company going and was selling his hardware or software to a bank, which he has eventually done. And I came in, this was when trans and men playing women's sport, I came in dressed as a woman and said I was going to join the ladies' golf tour. And all hell broke loose because Grant could see that all the people, he just didn't want to get involved in politically incorrect things to affect his business.
Sure.
Quite rightly so. And I said, mate, I think I should withdraw. He said, well, could you tone down a bit? I said, no, we're not toning down. We did this because, and he said, yep, no, we're very good friends. And I said, I'll withdraw and so we stopped doing the podcast with him. And then I started here with Mike Sheehan and Don Scott, and we've been doing this for 4 or 5 years here. And then Mike jumped off the podcast after we got charged by Gil McLachlan in the most ridiculous and fraudulent and bogus charge of vilification when we were discussing why Nicky Winmar lifted his jumper up out at Victoria Park 30 years ago, and we made no reference to Nicky Winmar's Indigenous background. We just said, and I wasn't at the game, but the other two were, and they said they thought, and most people thought it was about his fitness, pointing to his stomach. And he said, Winmar, that was about his skin colour, and we accepted that. But the general discussion was that we had vilified Winmar, and to his everlasting shame, the most incompetent CEO of the AFL ever, Gil McLachlan, charged us with vilification, threw 3 people under the bus only for his own political, social eliteness, and just in case he was embarrassed about his own whiteness, and never forgive him for it, or just a disgraceful act of throwing people under the bus.
Did Nicky Winmar get in touch? After that, like, do you have a relationship with him?
You might know the infamous time which I painted my face black coming on the Footy Show, and that was not meant to do that apparently. So I've met Nicky Winmar after that and shaken hands, and he's pushed. I won't say he's pushed, but people who have an agenda round up behind all those causes and want to make names for themselves. People like Peter Jess, he pushes all that sort of stuff. Peter Jess, of course, who ran 2 sets of books at Carlton when he was helping them out there. You know, these are the people that are judging you for your morality, and yet what they accuse you of, they do worse in spades. So I can see you looking at me thinking, gee, I wonder if any of this is legal or we'll get into trouble for
Sam,
this.
the good thing is...
all that is perfectly true.
The good thing is, Sam, on our podcast, we've got the little E, which means you can pretty much say... apart from being neo-Nazi content, we're pretty good.
Well documented.
And Sam, the good news is we're not here to push any... We love it. We've had plenty of controversies ourselves, not probably to the same degree that you have, but we'll get across your career shortly. But interested to hear about even the current day AFL, in your opinion. You've been outspoken in the past about modern day football.
Yes.
How do you feel about it currently? Did you watch the games on the weekend?
Yes, well, so I don't watch the football at all because it's ticked me off for a whole lot of different reasons. So I have been a captive audience for all the finals games. And if ever I had an opinion about how our game's going and how it's declined, the finals games have reinforced that 100-fold. They've been shocking games. It doesn't matter if they're close and you get 100,000 people to the ground. They've been disgraceful displays of what our game once used to be, except for the fact that the two sides that play the game almost properly, or almost that is recognisable from yesteryear, are the Brisbane Lions and the Greater West Sydney side, who actually take the game on, kick it down to people who they think might be able to finish the piece of play off by kicking a goal, go in pretty hard at the ball, don't fuck around with it too much. And if you compare that to the Melbourne sides who play, I sit and watch it and you think, how does people let this game be played like this, whether it be the coaching staff, the managers of game tactics, and I don't care what anyone says, they've been disgraceful games, but except the Brisbane Lions and the Greater West Sydney side.
They play a good brand. Kind of timely. Have you got some memories of Ron Barassi? He's obviously sadly just passed away. You guys.
I have. Like everyone, I'm sort of old enough to I played with him in state games, and I played against him when he played for Melbourne and Carlton, and I've had a long radio career with him on the not so much the television, but certainly the radio with him and Rex Hunt, and doing special comments at the football. And man, oh man, what a man! I've said this. Someone asked me. You know, it's pretty hard to trot out the same old generic accolades about people, but I would say I've met two great Australians in my life. One of them was Sir Weary Dunlop. I don't know if you've ever heard of Sir Weary Dunlop.
I have not, no, I'll be honest.
Well, Sir Weary Dunlop was a doctor, an army man, and was taken prisoner by the Japanese and looked after all the other prisoners of war, the Australians, and sacrificed himself and got tortured and beaten because he was just a marvellous Australian. And I said, and there's another one is Ron Barassi. The two greatest Australians I've met are Ron Barassi and Sir Weary Dunlop, and anyone else after that, there's daylight between the rest. So that's Ron.
For what reason though?
Because he was ethical and moral and straight and honest and naive. And when I say naive, there's so many things. I remember we were doing the broadcast with Rex and it started to become overcast at the MCG. And Ron said, I reckon the Weather Bureau shortly will be issuing a sheet, SHEET, a sheet weather alert for people in the country. And Rex said, I think you mean sheep, SHEEP. And Ron said, no, it's sheet, a sheet weather alert to warn the housewives to bring their washing off the line. And Rex said, Ron, you fucking bullshit. He said, so Rex rang the Weather Bureau during the half time and he said, we've got Billy Bunter on the phone from fucking, I don't know, the bomb for the Bureau of Meteorology. And he said, could you tell us, Bill, or what Billy's name was? He said, is it sheep or sheet? He said, no, it's sheep for the farmers to bring the sheep into sort of more shaded or safer areas of the farm. And so that was Ron. So that was so sheep weather alert. And I could cite so many things, and Ron would get a bit testy when you questioned whether he was right or wrong about things. But he was a fantastic man and never held a grudge, and we had some great times with him.
Yeah. Going back to before, probably after your playing days, your kind of step into the media. You were writing in the paper, weren't you?
Yep. I guaranteed a man who I was working with in business, guaranteed him at the bank, and he went broke, and the bank took my house off me. I didn't go bankrupt, but I had no money at all, so I thought, wow. So I then thought I might got the idea from a Playboy interview I was reading about someone was interviewing Scher. This is 30 years ago, and I thought, gee, that'd be interesting. I might see if I can interview a couple of people who play football along those lines, just ask really invasive and intrusive questions.
Yep.
But do it verbatim, don't take anything out of context. If they say this or that, just put it down. If they say I don't want to answer that question, I'll put that down. So I just did it word for word. And on the first one I did was Dermot Brereton, and I took it to Colin Duck at the Sun in those days, before it was the Herald Sun. And I said, would you print an interview like this if I could do these? He said, oh, shit, he said, wow. He said, would we ever? I said, well, I asked Dermot, I said, do you mind if I show? He said, not at all. So Colin Duck said, oh, yeah, if you can get an interview. I said, well, that is an interview. He said, that's an interview. He said, did you ask him those questions? I said, yep. So that's how it started. So I did. It went about 3 different editors in the Sun and became the Herald Sun, and they used to put them in. I did about 100 and don't know how many I did, but it morphed in from doing footballers to sports people to politicians to visiting celebrities, and you know, they were pretty straight questions that I thought people who read all this stuff would like to know the answers to, not the lollipop and honey rolling down the footpath stuff. Just, you know, ask them the straight questions, and people, they didn't seem to mind answering them, and if they did, they told me. So then I started on the television after Jack Dyer. I was the captain at Geelong. I was at the Kazali Award function at the Hilton, it was in those days, or the Southern Cross it was in those days, and Jack had an accident, so they got me out of the audience to compare his segment, and they seemed to like the way I did it, and that's how it started.
One of my favourite interviews of all time is on the Footy Show when you sat down with Jack Dyer.
Yeah.
And what a great man he seemed to be, but did he have any, I suppose, influence on you in your style when going into the media and commentary?
No, that's a very good question, because Jack would no more give anyone any advice, because he wouldn't think, he just wouldn't think to do that. Jack was Jack, but I've said this many times. Jack prepared nothing. He was the most humorous man I've ever met, because he didn't try and be funny, and he didn't know he was.
Yeah.
And he didn't try anything he was. He didn't try to be anything that he wasn't. And I have sort of took a leaf out of that book. and he was about as entertaining, him and Lou was the consummate showman who prepared everything and was trying to, but Jack just did it off the top of his head, and they used to. Him and the major, the captain and the major. I can't think of the major's name. A bloke called his name's Major, not Bill Major. He'll be happy I've forgotten his name. But they used to broadcast on 3KZ, the football. They used to turn up just before the ball was bounced. As soon as the ball siren had gone at the end of it, they'd say, well, we thought so-and-so was best in the ground, and then they'd pack up and go, while all the other stations would do the pre-game analysis and then the after-match, synopsis of what was going on. And they won the ratings. That they were the most popular broadcast team. I can't think of the major. The captain and the major, Jack Dyer and... how bad's that? I can't think of his name. Anyhow, so that's what they used to do. Jack used to wander in. I don't think he knew any of the players, and the major would tidy it all up, and Jack would make statements like, "Oh yeah, you got where the ball ain't. Never get where the ball ain't." And they paired off in threes, and he said, "I've only got 2 words to say to you players: believe in yourself." All that sort of stuff, and he was legendary for. Making faux pas he didn't know he'd made.
Yeah. But then you also worked with, well, it looks like someone that was the opposite, which is completely the epitome of perfect preparation. Eddie. Like, was Eddie a real prepared person?
Eddie is absolutely... now, I've said this before, and people say, well, how would you know about this? And I say, well, only from looking and learning from what people have told me. I would say there'd be no better person in the world, than Eddie McGuire to front a live broadcast or a function or a special or a whatever on the radio or the television. He is the best. He's worked at it. He's articulate. He's as smart as a whip. And I don't think people realise how hard it is to look down the barrel of a camera, no rehearsal, no auto cue, no cue cards, no idiot sheets, no mistakes, just do it straight off the top of your head down the barrel and then walk away and say anything else, and people say, wow, we'd put a couple of hours aside to do this, we thought. And he said, nope, people just don't believe. He's fantastic. And I know he gets criticised a lot because... most of what he says is absolutely spot on and true. And I know he taints himself a little. I use that word kindly because of his avid support of Collingwood. But, look at what he did with that side. He saved them from bankruptcy, got 100%. Them out to their headquarters out on the old Olympic Park. I mean, holy mackerel. They should make a statue to him. Now, he's a friend of mine, and I'm happy to say that, but I'd like to know anyone that would disagree with anything I said then.
No, don't think you'd find many. So we do want to talk a little bit about the Footy Show, of course, because there's so many memorable moments, but I'm very interested in what happened when the show went off air. Do you have any memories of any times when Eddie might have given you a good old-fashioned spray? So obviously we don't have any relationship with Eddie, but we do hear stories that he can fire up when things perhaps go wrong. No. Has there been something that springs to your mind that you went off air and then the show goes off air, the crowd goes home, and then he said, Sam? And
no, he said that plenty of times, but he is I say this absolutely with great respect, he's a control freak, and he demands excellence and perfection from the people who he employs or who are charged with running his show or our show. Mm-hmm. I'm a different generation to Ed, and he got me on there probably because he thought I would do exactly what I did, and I didn't go to any of the...
Did he hand select you? Was that how it worked? How did you...
Yes. Ian Johnson, the late Ian Johnson, got Eddie over from Channel 10 as a reporter to start. His idea was to start a Footy Show with comedian Trevor Marmalade. Eddie is the host, and they said they should have someone a little more mature. I thought they meant mature as in, like sensible. He meant just older. So he thought the dynamic would be a straight man, a comedian, and someone who probably had an opinion, wasn't afraid to say it. And that's how that started. So he did select me, and I'm a very good friend of his, but he took me aside every now and again and said, "Mate, come on." And I said, "Well, Ed, there's a fine line between doing this and doing what that dreadful inverted air commas theatre is to what it's about." And I think the success of the show is the fact that I never knew really who was on the show until I got there. I didn't we didn't rehearse anything we said. I just did it off the top of my head. And most of the times I said things that I shouldn't have or did things that I shouldn't have. He had to tidy up, which he did. And so did Gary and James when they took over from Ed when he went up to run the network. And Rebecca and Hutchie. So they're all very good people, very good people. And the secret of our show, I can't talk about anyone else's because I've never been on anyone else's. I've never seen anyone else's. The secret of our show, I think, is that there's a very seldom used word in show business called generosity. You got to be generous to the people you work with. Never step over what they're doing. Never try and one-up them. Never try and gazump them. Never try and knife them in the back. When it's your turn to speak, let them never use any broadcast as a job interview for bigger and better things. Just be happy what you're doing, and if someone thinks you're any good, they'll ask you to do something else.
It's very good advice. One
of my favourite things that you did, and I'd love to hear what you were feeling in that moment, but when you jumped off that 10-metre dive board.
So this is a classic example of this. Now you must remember that our show went live to air.
That's the amazing thing.
Wasn't on 5-second delay, wasn't recorded. So I keep saying to the people, the times I got suspended and fined by the Australian Broadcasting Tribunal, if we had even had our show on 5-second delay, no one would ever know I did any of those things because they wouldn't have gone to air.
Yeah.
No one would know, and I came out and walked behind Ed with my face painted black. No one would know that I bought a mannequin on that looked like
Caroline Wilson.
Yeah. No one would know that Shane Crawford pulled my pants down and left my plums hanging out there on national television. So no one would know I did any of those things because they would never have gone to air. No one would know any of the things I'd said about men or women or people. But we had two dirigibles, two huge balloons called Bill Brownless and Brian Taylor, who had wandered out to the MSAC, the swimming pool, and had jumped off the 10 metre, 33 feet it is in the air. They jumped off it and they nearly shit themselves and they held their noses, they hit. And this is the first time I saw it was when Ed played it, or who, it might have been Gary or James, it was Gary and James. And
they didn't dive, did they? They just jumped?
No, they jumped. And they said, and we had Bill and Brian out there, and look at this. And they jumped and I said, what's good about that, Gary? They said, oh, it's pretty high. I said, why don't they dive? And he said, well, you dive. I said, me dive? I said, I'll go up next week and dive off the board. How piss weak is that? So anyhow, if you say that, they all know the crew and they got onto that and they publicised that I was going to dive. I've never dived off a board in my life.
and mind you, were you in your 60s at this point?
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
I was in my, I absolutely was. Oh, well, no, it might have been in my 60s. Yeah, I was well over 60. So we get out there and we used to use, and we got criticised for this, we used a little man called Arthur, who I said was a dwarf. And they said, oh, no, you can't call him a dwarf. He's a little person. I said, Arthur's a fucking dwarf. Ask him. I said, what are you, Arthur? He said, a dwarf. And I said, that's how I said, we're taking the piss out of ourselves and him. He said, that's how he makes his money. He's delighted to come on and be part of our skits. And so I'm standing there and my budgie smuggler's up on top of the tower. I'd never dived in my life. and Shane Crawford's there trying to push me off, and Arthur's there as a doctor. He's got a headlamp on and a fucking stethoscope, and he's checking me out. Anyhow, so we're watching the monitor, and Gary said, "Righto, it's over to the MSAC. Sam's going to dive off the board." I'm not like those piss week 2 that week before. And I stepped to the edge of the thing, and honestly, it's because the water's clear, you don't know where the surface of the water is. It just looks as though you're jumping into space. And someone said, "Now don't just dive down, jump out like a swallow, and then try and hit the water at 90 degrees, vertically." I said, "Oh yeah, good idea." So anyhow, Gary said, "Righto, Foss," and Shane's there, and I had some handcuffs that someone had given me, and I handcuffed myself to Shane. I said, "So if you push me, Shane, you're coming with me."
Very smart.
Yeah, so anyhow, so we undid the handcuffs. So Gary said, "Get on with it." So out I jumped, and I got out, and I jumped out, and I thought halfway out, I thought, I'm going to die. I had no idea what I was doing. I hit the water at 45 degrees. I got a hernia, an inguinal hernia out of it. And I was swimming to the edge of the pool, and Shane had raced down to interview me, and I've actually got a hernia, and I'm going, and they thought I was putting that on. And so that was the great diving off the board, the most frightening thing I've ever done. I've done a few frightening things in my life, but if you've never done it before, I invite someone next time you're down at a swimming pool and they've got a 10-metre board, go and dive off and see how you go.
I bet. I'm not putting my hand up as we speak, but you mentioned Shane Crawford. Your relationship with him, talk to us a little bit about that dynamic, because on air at least it was just brilliant. I mean, you seem to just know how to push your buttons.
Shane was a loose cannon. He was a naughty little boy, and he was up for it all. He had a great sense of the theatre of it, and his one aim. I'm probably 30 years older than Shane. I might be 40 years. I don't know how old Shane is. How old Shane? I'm 30 years older. His one aim was to actually cause me as much pain and injury and grief on the show. He'd squirt me with a fire hydrant. He'd tip shit over my head. He'd punch me in the ring if we had to do boxing. His whole idea was to try and hurt me severely. And he is a naughty little boy. And he pulled my pants down that day, and but he was good for the show. People loved him. People loved him as much as they hated me, so that was a good dynamic. And he a very good operator, Shane, and was a great value to the network. And now I went and watched him in a stage play called Joseph in His Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Which he got criticised. I don't know why. He was very good in it. When I saw him, he was very good in it. And so we met the cast after. Now, I'm just saying this because I don't give a stuff what you are, but I met the cast who were made up of heterosexuals, homosexuals, fucking Z generation, Z generation, LGBTQ people, trans people. They're fantastic people. Shane said, "Sam will take you out in his boat." I said, bullshit, I will. Believe it or not, when the show ended, he said, "They're all looking forward to coming out in your boat." And I said, "Really?" So anyhow, they all turned up one day on a great day. We had the best day. They were fantastic people. Yeah. And Shane drove the whole lot, and I drove them. They drove. They tried to grope me, rape me, pull my dick out. They did. They were fantastic. Just playing the game. And so they had a fantastic time on the boat. So that's Shane. Shane had just... he was had an infectious personality, and he's just a really naughty, dopey, brainless boy.
You seem like you were all really good mates, though. Like you had. It just looked like you had the dream job, all you boys. Because like you were all mates, you were all together, you were having fun. We were. And then you went overseas, went on trips. Like.
We did. No, as I say, because no one ever thought that anyone was trying to dud anyone to climb the ladder. They all there was the regulars were Bill and Fev was fantastic, and we had a band of Ed had a list of about 10 people that would rotate through the desk beside the guests when they became available or not, and there was The regulars were about 10 ex-footballers, and then the absolute regulars were me and Eddie and Trevor, and then when Trevor left, it was Bill mainly. So that was the standard staple people who did it, and then we'd get the footballers to come in, or the personalities who used to, their managers and the clubs used to really clamber to get them on the Footy Show, and then when it got a bit edgy and we started asking them a bit questions, and all the sponsors got involved, and then the woke brigade round us up, they got very fearful of sending the players in case they said something they shouldn't say, and because it's live, and so then we had to struggle to get players on, but I've said, I can't say to anyone, I'll say to you boys, doesn't matter the questions you're asked, it's the answers you give, so never be frightened or worried about any question you get asked. It's up to you how you answer it.
Can I quickly jump in for 1 sec? There's a close family friend of ours and best mate of Dad's, Brett Lovett.
Yep.
And the story, have you heard this?
Not sure.
Again, I remember, Sam, I can't remember which one it was, but one of the episodes you said it was one of the funniest moments on the Footy Show.
Oh, well, Gary did. Is that when he started to sweat?
Yeah.
So he came on, he was shit scared. He was so nervous, and so he came on, and Gary said, he's a bit nervous, Sam. I said, you said go easy on him. I said, what, mate, this is, before he walked out, I said, well, what do you mean I'll go easy on him? I'm going to ask him. So he comes out and he sits down and he says, now I know you don't like doing this sort of stuff, mate. And he visibly started, you'd think he just started to leak fluid from every fucking his nose and came out. And in the end, he was sitting there. You'd think he just got out of a swimming pool. And Gary had got onto this, and I looked at him. I said, mate, if it makes you feel more relaxed and more at home, I had a glass of water. I just tipped it over his head, and he sort of saw the humorous side of it. We didn't like to make dickheads out of people we'd asked to come on, or didn't try, a bit like David Schwartz with the pie.
Yes.
We didn't, because we appreciate them coming on, but that's live television. I thought, I'll have a go at this, and he'll either say, he'll either get up and belt me, or he'll see the funny side of it, because he knew he was sweating, and Gary said it's the funniest thing. He said, Christ almighty. And so they're things on the spur of the moment you do, not rehearsed. You can't rehearse all that stuff, because how would you know someone's going to sweat? So that's what we used to do, just do it on the spur of the moment. And as I say, if that had been taped and Brett, or I think it was Brett, didn't want that to go to air, you wouldn't have seen that. So,
yeah, of course.
So it's a bit like performing without a safety net, and that was the adrenaline rush we got out of doing it. And I loved doing it until the woke brigade caught up with us.
Came in.
And which was fantastic. We got away with it for 25 years, which is the longest running live-to-air television show in Australia.
Wow.
Because Hey It's Saturday started on Saturday morning and then went to a different time slot. So,
well, unfortunately, we've lost that magic. I mean, we grew up at the very tail end of, well, not the very tail end, but towards the tail end of
mid-90s we were.
Yeah, well, born, but by the time we started watching it, it's probably mid-2000s. But we certainly had all the VHSs and DVDs that have it. But one of my favourites, Sam, and it always makes me laugh. Whenever I need to laugh, I'll just find it on YouTube and listen to you talk about Jason Dunstall, whether it's on the show or on radio. And some of the funniest things I think I've ever heard is when you ring in, I don't know if it was expected or unexpected, but you'd ring in and you might have been playing golf and you might have saw a movement in the trees. No. But I just think that's some of the funniest stuff I've ever heard.
I used to work with the chief on Triple M, and I said to the chief, and I can say this because he's a Caucasian.
Yeah, and I always international. We need to point
qualify
that out.
Yeah. I said, Chief, on Triple M one day, and I said, mate, please don't take offence at this, but you look like a silverback. You are seriously. And he said, he started calling me the fossilised old tarpaulin, like a crumpled up old fucking tarpaulin lying in the side of a shed. And I said, Chief. And I called him the chief. I started calling him the chief because he was made temporary manager of Hawthorn when someone... and I said, well, the chief of Hawthorn, he came in, sit behind his mahogany desk there. He said, yeah, the chief of staff chief. And that's how that started. And I said, mate, you look like an ape. You seriously do. And I think about a chief, and he's sitting there. He said, I can't. He didn't say fuck yourself on Triple M, but he said, mate, ease up. I said, no, chief, please listen to me. And James Brayshaw has collapsed onto the floor at this stage. And I said, you think about it. You got a very ape-like head. You got no neck, goes straight into your torso. You got a long back. You got short little buns. You got short little feet. You got opposable thumbs on your hand. I said, and you smell, and you come into what's known as must, which is a sexual thing that that mammals, particularly elephants and apes, they emit from their body when they're on heat. And he said, ease up or I'll knock you out. I said, Chief, please. And anyhow, he played the game. Yeah. And I then started to embellish. James Brayshaw said, oh, mate, the Chief said, anyhow, so the next week, the Chief used to drive in. He used to have a brown Volvo. And I said, we'd get in there early, and the Chief would come in a bit later on for the preamble on Triple M football. I said, think the Chief will be listening to this, James? He said, I wouldn't think he would be. I said, oh, that's good. Do you think if you're in Swan Street now and you think that there's an ape or a silverback beside you in a brown Volvo, don't call the zoo? And James would just, because, and anyhow he'd come in and he'd say to me, hey, mate, he said, I'm listening to that shit. I said, mate, do you think I said, James asked me to do it. And James said, go on, give the Chief a bit of a tweak again. So then I used to go out to sports nights and someone say exactly what you've asked me, and I used to go a bit heavier then. I said, the Chief came, and I went through all he's got little ears and little button eyes, and I've said if you put morphed a profile beside the Chief and a fucking silverback, they'd be identical, which is a great compliment. They're magnificent mammals. And I said, and I was out playing golf one day, and the Chief's out there, and we're swinging away, and then he started to sweat round near his arse. So I said, I think he must have been coming on must, getting sexually aroused. I said, because we get out there and we're playing on one of the holes, and the wind got up and the trees started to sway, and he just suddenly lost concentration. He looked up at the trees and he thought, fuck, I should be in those trees. and I said, and if he goes into the trees and you're playing with him, just take no notice of him, because he'll turn up. So I said, and we're playing on, and about 8 holes later he arrives on the green with winter nuts and berries and fucking food to eat. He'd been well, fuck. So anyhow,
let's go.
The Chief heard this. The Chief heard this. The Chief, this got back to the Chief. He said, mate, could you belt me anymore? And I said, Chief, it's humorous, isn't it? So we rang him up one day. We used to show clips of actual real silverbacks mating and, dog fucking. Yeah. Mate. And I said, there's the Chief on the way to the football. and anyhow, this is the only time I've ever preempted anything. I rang him up one day. I said, Chief, they've got a whole lot of skits and shit. They want me to wear a fucking suit with a red ass on it and lie on it. And I said, do you mind if we ring you up on air? He said, what? This is a private comment. I said, we'll ring you up. If you could just answer the phone. I don't give a fuck what you say, but answer the phone, will you? No, I might. Anyhow, so he played the game beautifully. So we're on then Gary and James didn't know this. Well, they must have, because we had the phone there. Anyhow, I said, I'm lying on the banana lounge and I'm picking my ass with my fingers, and I said, Gary said, do you think the Chief, I said, do you think the Chief minds us doing this? And Gary said, I said, let's ask him. So we answered so he wouldn't answer it the first time. And then he eventually answered it, and I said, Chief, you're on air, don't swear. He said, what do you mean I'm on air? Go, and I said, don't swear. So he hung up, and so we had it 3 times, time constraints on television.
Sure.
Gary said, we can't ring him anymore, and I said to the audience, will we try one more time? No. So he picked it up and bench. He said, I said, Chief, it's your old mate, the Foss. Don't hang up, Chief, please. Don't hang up. He said, what's wrong with you? And he did it beautifully. I said, now, Chief, do you mind if I dress up like an ape? Because you look like an ape. He said, you crumpled up old fool. He said, what's wrong with you? You're going senile. I said, you know, and I've got my red ass here. Do you mind? Do you think that's vaguely humorous? He didn't say get fucked. He said, no, that's it. I've had enough. And he hung up. So,
classic.
It was classic. It was classic stuff. The Chief. And he's a very good man, very intelligent man, very good at what he does. Yeah. But shit, he looks like an ape.
Well, there's that really good, and it happened a few years back when you were doing special comments. Didn't you? You dropped a zinger on air, didn't you? You dropped the fuckwit live on Triple M, didn't you?
Mate, well, hang on a minute. Now, you asked me at the start of this about the football.
Yeah.
So this is the game has been in decline in and I always say this: if you love football, good on you. It's fantastic. It's the most patronised sport per capita of the population in the world. If you love it, they've had nearly 100,000 to fucking every game they've played this week. If you love it, it's fantastic. No one gives a stuff how their side plays as long as they win, and that's a fact.
True.
But I had to go and watch games for Triple M, and I'd filled in for someone. I don't know. I'd watched 3 games in a row, and it got to Sunday, and I was filling in I was doing special comments. And it was the worst game I've ever seen. And the stations don't like you to run down the games because it puts the sponsors off, and people think, oh well, this man's. I'm not going to listen to this, and not going to bag on my side. I'll turn on to another station. Yeah. And they said, don't run the game down, Sam. And I said, oh well, mate. All right. So, anyhow, I watched. So we get to the end, and I said, and they said, you do a rundown, you do a clean up of the game. I said, this is probably the worst game I've ever seen. Honest, seriously, there was 5-18, one side kicked, and the other one didn't score a goal for us, and there was not a. I don't think no one could mark a beach ball if you took them down, let alone take one over a head in a football. So a bloke that we used to do talk back, and they said, is Newman there, or Foss or something? I said, yeah, I'm here. He said, I thought it was a good game. I said, were you at the game? He said, yeah. I said, well, you're a fuckwit. And Brian Taylor's on the compare, and he said, oh, Sam. I said, Brian, mate, seriously, you can't listen to that shit. Yeah. Anyhow, so that was it. So Gary Pert called me in on the next day. He's running Triple M, and he said, mate, I tell you what we'll do. He said, you can't say that. You can't do that. You can't swear, and you can't run the listeners down. He said, I tell you what we'll do, because they like the preamble, all the stuff about the Chief. He said, why don't you come and do the pre-match from 12 till 1, or whenever it was, 12 till 2. And then when the game starts, go home. I said, really? I said, would there be a diminution of pay? He said, no, we'll keep you on your contract until the end of the year. He said, just come in, do the 2 hours, and go home. And he said, and we'll see you honour your contract. And I said, Gary, that's mighty neighbourly of you. I should have told someone to get fucked 3 years ago. Anyhow, so that was it. So that was the end of my radio career. And then eventually it became the end of my television career.
Yeah. Well, we do need to ask, because I'm not sure how across you are on things like Sam's just having a little cough at the moment. That's okay.
Nah, sorry, mate.
Don't stress at all.
I've come out of my sick bed to do this.
No, we really appreciate it. I haven't had a laugh like this for a long time. But Sam, I don't know how across you are with social media in general. I know you were quite outspoken about it for a long time, but these days a lot of people get a lot of attention by doing street interviews, going around with wireless microphones and cameras and asking people questions. We did a bit of it last year at the footy with another brand, and we're asking our fans more provocative questions. It also saw us in a little bit of trouble at times. But you really were the pioneer of that style of content, whether you probably know it or not, especially in this country, because everybody that does it mentions you and Street Talk. So talk to us about the whole concept of Street Talk and maybe just if things that just flow to your mind when you think about it, perhaps some of the people you interviewed, the places you went, but the general concept for listeners that may not be aware.
Yeah, okay. So Street Talk sort of started when Harvey Silver was the first producer of the show. And this is when Trevor and I and Eddie were just in its infancy. Been going a couple of years, and maybe just 1 year to be going. And we were to interview a bloke called Leslie Nielsen, who was in those Flying High movies. You know, the aeroplane ones where they send up Leslie Nielsen.
Don't know.
Flying High. What are they called? Well done.
Well done, Bailey.
Naked Gun, and he was an airline, and then they had Naked Gun 1 and Naked Gun 2, and he was to come on, and he had he never came on. This is how it started, but he used to think it was funny. He had a little ball that when you squeezed it sounded like a fart, and I met him. I'd met him before, and I sat down, and when I sat down, he went.
Yeah.
He said, "Was that you, Sam?" I said. Wasn't me, mate. And he used to do it to everyone. I thought, how fucking childish can you... Anyhow, he was scheduled to come on and be interviewed on the show, and he didn't turn up. And Harvey Silver said, shit, we've designated a quarter of an hour or 10 minutes for this interview. He said, need a filler. So he said, I said, I don't know if I said it. He said, you take the microphone, go and speak to someone in the audience or something.
Wow.
That's how it started. And that was pretty successful. It was pretty watchable.
Yeah,
certainly.
Not from me. I just asked the questions, and then we started to do it proper, and it just grew. And we used to go all over Australia, and people used to say you used to pick out the areas where you thought there were fucking idiots and nuffs, and I said, not at all. We used to go to where there were topical areas, like if someone from Footscray was playing their first game, we'd go out to Footscray. Hawthorn, Collingwood, they said, you never go and interview people in outside the stock exchange. I said, we'll go out next week and interview people outside the stock exchange. So I did. And men and women, captains of industry, would wander out, and I'd say, hello, sir, what do you think of the pies? They say, yes, they're a very good side. Yes, I think that. And we had a whole lot of people. We took it back, and I didn't edit it out, but the editors put it out, and we put it to air. I said, let me show you what happens when we try and be. We try and not entertain you.
Sure.
So they put it to air, and it was the most boring. And people said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Right, that's the good experiment. Well done." So we would go out, and we'd go out to places honestly, and people used to love it. They used to come from we didn't even have to walk down the street. I
was going to ask.
Get out of the car, and they'd come like moths around a porch light at 3 a.m. in the morning. They'd just fucking flock, and instead of asking the man outside the stock exchange, what do you think of Collingwood? I'd say, what do you think of Collingwood, mate? And he'd say, how are they hanging, Sam? And I'd say, how's what hanging? How your balls hanging? And I'd say, what's that got to do with Collingwood? He said, what did you ask me? They'd take no notice of the question. They just wanted, whether they wound us up or not, they just wanted to be on television. And then people said, oh, you're going out looking for idiots. I said, we're not looking for idiots. The idiots are looking for us.
Yeah.
And they used to love being on. And we spoke up to a bloke, the best ever. We tried to contact this man later. I was up in Oxford Street in Sydney, and this man who was absolutely drug fucked in a business suit, and his eyes were so wide they looked like the moon. And he walked up, and I said, sir, I'm asking you about the Swans. He said, oh, yes, the Swans. He said, I've seen them. I said, where? He said, on the bay, on the harbour. I said, not those fucking... I said, the Sydney Swans. He said, oh, yes. And I said, and what do you think of... Eddie's was the host. I said, what do you think of Eddie McGuire? He said, oh, it's a great player. And he was trying to be serious. He was trying to show that he wasn't fucked. And it was the most humorous, and I said, well, thanks a lot. He said, and we tried to contact him. We tried to contact a few people who were absolutely on smack or whatever they were. They'd come on, and we thought, well, we'll put them to where they wanted to. And we had several people, who would contact us and say, mate, I saw myself on television and realised how fucked I am. And I said, you, in a sort of indirect way, helped me clean my life up.
Wow.
No, we did. And we had people who were either freshly out of jail or were on the run. They see themselves, the coppers would ring us up and say, you better just give us where you met that man or person. And no, the people used to love it. And then the vocal minority started to get in touch with the station, said, you can't keep doing this to the public. And we said, well, doing what to the public? If I got out and have a microphone and a camera and stand there and someone comes up and speak to me, I said, was that... So you know what happened after that. So then we got round up, and then the sponsors got involved, and then they said, oh... So that's... But we make no apology for anything we did. People used to love it.
Mm. And towards it's like some of my favourite parts were the like the more recent years, but the times when you had to... How long did it take to film all those intros for the grand final footy show? Like, you know, you did the parodies? Like,
no, mate, well, they were people, the grand final footy show, now this has nothing to do with me or the people on it, so that is world-class production stuff.
Yeah.
You just think about putting live to air. We sold the Rod Laver Arena out quicker than any artist that came over, any band, they sold it out in half an hour, they used to. And 15,000 people or 14,000. And we used to go and do all the parodies. We spent weeks doing that. And they were so professional that people at Nine, the crew and the behind-the-scenes people, they were brilliant. And to get the coordinate all the players to come in and do dances and choreography. So... to do all that, to get the best of Street Talk, to give out all the awards, and the people who won the car for that other segment we did about, would have been champions.
Almost
Footy Legends, AFL, almost Footy Legends. To give all the prizes out, and it was a monumental achievement of logistics. And, the great thing is that someone had sabotaged and go pull the plug on and they said they had contingency plans for all that. And that was live to air. You tell people that overseas. I know they do it at the Super Bowl, but that's one song. To put a whole show together for 3 hours and coordinate it was extraordinary. And... world class. And so I think they're resurrecting the grand final footy shows for grand final week. They're just going to show them. I did see that. Show them. I don't know.
They're not refilming something?
No, they're just reshowing the ones from 1994 to 2000, whenever the last one was.
Great.
I don't know. So the problem they'll have, and this is Eddie's station, Jam TV are doing it. The problem they'll have is the things that were entertaining and humorous and people loved. There'll be a fine line between what they can show in this day and age, and what people will say. Oh, well, they've shown all this shit again and all that and stuff. And I said to Ed, mate, I said, if they're going to remember the footy show for anything, not that he'd taken any notice of me, if they're going to remember the footy show for anything, you may as well just bite the bullet and show the whole stuff that you think people want to watch. He said, yeah, we will do that, but. I said, yeah, I know the but. Anyhow, so I don't know what they're going to show.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts. I know we're just backtracking a little bit, but we talked about Arthur for a little while, and for a long time you had this great on-air relationship with Roland Rocchiello, who was obviously a homosexual man.
Well, I think he's asexual, but anyway,
there you go. Then my apologies.
That's all right. No, he would call himself anything you wanted to call him.
Exactly right. But people might look at that now and think you're taking the piss. But
we were taking the piss. We take the piss. I'll tell you who we took the piss out of first.
Yourselves.
Ourselves.
Yeah.
We never took ourselves too seriously. We were never. We were never trying to downgrade or make people feel uncomfortable that came on the show. Roland, I've known Roland for ages, a long time.
It was some of the best TV too.
Long time, and he played the game beautifully. He's an old thespian, and he knows how it works. And he would play up to me, and I'd be the big macho footballer, and he'd be the nice petite metrosexual. And no, it was fantastic. He loved it, and we loved it. And as I say. I got accused, still do, of being a either sexist, racist, transphobic, homophobic. I get accused of being anything that ends in ick or ist. And I say, well, that might be because I don't care who you are or what you are if I just look at you as people. And if
that's right.
You are a fuckwit and you happen to be a different nationality to me, that to me is you're just a fuckwit. But and people say that about me. I said, this has got nothing to do with what you signal as, what you think you are as, what you are. I've said, and I don't know why everyone in the world doesn't have this opinion. I have no idea why people think it is homophobic or transphobic to say that someone who is a biological male has the right or the arrogance or the pomposity to think they can play female sport for a trophy or for points or for a gold medal. It's all right if you just men want to play women's sport.
Yeah.
And that's for fun. But if you're serious, why that is allowed to happen is beyond me. And they say, well, we'll cut our dick off and we'll cut our balls off and we are actually a female. And you say you actually are not a female. You don't know how it works, mate. You've got the DNA of a man. Doesn't matter what you do to yourself. You can take hormone reduction, all that shit. I mean, it is so ridiculous. And I don't know why everyone doesn't have that opinion. If you want to be anything you want to be in life, do it. Call yourself anything you like. We'll call you by your pronouns, or well, I won't. Call yourself by your pronouns, they. I will just call you you.
Yeah.
Hello, you. How are you?
Yeah. Well,
no, seriously. They drag you into feeling uncomfortable about living in a planet where 1% of the world makes you act a different way. And why?
Trust me, Sam, I'm with you.
No, it doesn't matter if you're not with me.
No, I know.
I'd be happy if you weren't. I'd be happy to have a sensible discussion with you, but it's just so ridiculous.
But that's what I was about to say. I know that. But the thing is, regardless of all those accusations, the one thing that you always took the piss out of yourself first, and that's the thing that's a missing piece on the other end. They do not take the piss out of themselves.
No, they don't.
But yeah, I just thought, especially how you acted on the show, I just thought it, like, to totally take yourself not seriously, to take the piss out of yourself first. In my opinion, you wouldn't do anything to somebody else you wouldn't do to yourself. That's at least how it came across.
That is absolutely right. No, I wouldn't. For bets, I've bungee jumped off the St. Nevis thing over in New Zealand. I've driven one of those big monster trucks. I don't know if you've ever driven a big monster truck.
I haven't, no.
Christ, is that hard to do?
We went in a V8 and that was enough.
No, people said, oh, you didn't drive it. I said, didn't drive it, Christ. I've done, we've done plenty of things. Plenty of things that have been very hair-raising. But if it was for the show, we used to do it. So it was good.
I'd hate to finish without asking about your good friend Shane Warne. You guys had a really good relationship, and do you have a good story about Warnie or on the golf course? I know you played a lot of golf together.
Played a lot of golf together. Knew Shane from, how did I meet Shane? Maybe from coming on the Footy Show, and you just click with people. So I'm 25 years older than Shane, so I'm a different generation, and we played golf together, and he liked my. Just the fact we don't take itself too seriously. We played a lot of golf, went overseas playing golf, played for money. Shane loved playing for money. Shane loved money. And he was just a really fantastic bloke for, I keep saying if they'd actually ever played cricket in America, he would be as big a pop star in the world as anyone.
Yeah.
And he's an engaging man. And he was interested in anyone I introduced him to. He was really interested in them, wasn't arrogant, wasn't up himself, knew he was good, didn't tell people he was. Great golfer, shocking driver. Well, he's a very good driver, but just very brisk, and frighten the crap out of you. And every time he'd drag me out to places, and as I say, I was over really all that scene. Mind you, when I say that scene, he wasn't a drug taker at all. Didn't take drugs. But he used to look after me. He used to treat me. I used to look after me as though he was my father. He'd always come over and make sure I was all right, and people weren't hassling me. So he was a brilliant person, and never killed anyone, never maimed anyone, never punched anyone, and he got the crap that they said about him. But of course, it's a backhanded compliment for the very fast-paced life he lived without actually hurting anyone or doing anything that was illegal, really, except maybe a couple of speeding fines. They couldn't get enough of him, and that really just shows you what people think of him. If you can just be as fairly unobtrusive, not unobtrusive, but just not do really serious things that should get you in the paper, but to have as much press about him, it just shows you how much he was revered, really.
Very true.
This is one of my final questions, and I hope you don't mind me asking, but
I don't mind you asking anything, mate, if you heard me say.
Yes, that's very true.
You like.
That's very true. Well, this one might be a little bit more difficult and off topic to what we've spoken about, but
let me be the judge of that.
Okay, I'll let you be the judge of that, Sam. A couple of years ago, I think, and you might have to correct me if I'm wrong, but you tragically lost your partner at the time, suddenly.
Yeah.
I believe. How did that affect you, and how does it affect your life today?
Well, so... no, that's mate. I don't want to answer that. That's fucking. No. So I've been married 3 times before.
How many wives have you had, Sam?
Of my own, only. And I went out with this Amanda. Went out with her. I've been going out with her for decade, 12 years.
Okay.
And we eventually started living together, and she was about to turn 50, and I thought I took her to Japan for her 40th birthday with a couple of friends of mine, and I thought, I don't know what to do for her 50th, so I just thought she might want to get married. So it didn't worry me because, as I say, I had 3 goes at it, and I wasn't going. I wasn't going anywhere else. I was either with her or I was just going to be on my own. So anyhow, I got Greg Evans, my great friend and marriage celebrant, I said, can we do this? Are we allowed to do this without telling her? And he said, not really, you're meant to give notice. I said, well, he said, because the only thing is because if it happens and I'm there and they say, hang on a minute, I don't want to marry you. I said, no, can I assure you, Greg, that won't happen. You knew Amanda. So anyhow, we arranged, so I surprised her one day. As she came in, and I said, this is Greg. And she said, why are you here, Greg? She said, I'm going to marry you. And so that was actually on her 50th birthday. So anyhow, that was the happiest day of her life.
Wow.
So, and she was a good girl. She was terrific. So, So, well, a year later, I'm down with some friends, and I tried to ring her, and she's not answering the phone. And I couldn't speak about this for a long time, but this is just how the world you live in, what it serves up to you. So I said, I can't get hold of her, and someone said, I said she's probably lying. I've said this before. I said, God, she's probably lying dead up in the apartment. And so I thought nothing of it. So the blokes I was with went away, and I got home, and sure enough. So I rang both of them, and I said, you won't believe what I'm about to tell you. And that... They knew exactly what I was about to tell them. They said, don't tell me. And I said, can you believe that? So that's how that happened. And So and so I don't know if you've ever been prepared for anything in life. So when Shane died, I had a bit of an inkling of what it was like to suffer tragedy. But you see, because I'm sort of in the public eye, people say, "Oh, poor old Sam," and I said, "But please, don't make me any different to anyone else in the world. This happens on a daily basis to everyone. You just know that I've suffered a bit of grief because I'm sort of in the public eye, but gee, think of the people that go through this every day. Loved ones die, get killed in a car accident, die of cancer, get on drugs, overdose. I mean, just think about it. And so I know it. You don't want people to say, "Oh, poor Sam," and I don't want anyone to say that at all. But if someone asks you about it, like you've just did, I'm happy to answer it. But I don't volunteer the information. Well, what's the point of doing that? No one else volunteers their troubles in life to anyone. Yeah. But if you're asked about it, as I say, you ask me anything you like. But that's so as we say, mate. Who said life's meant to be fair? Not one person in this world. And you boys would be exactly the same. You've lost your dad. I knew your dad. I'm sure you had as much grief as I've had, and I don't know much about you.
Not to that extent, no.
Well, it'll happen, and you'll think, oh, shit, I see why people get a bit upset.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We'll make this our last question. What do you want to be remembered for, Sam, your legacy? Like, when you finish... And when you die one day, when it's your time, what do you want everyone to remember you as, and what you want your legacy to be?
No, look. People say to me, "Do you think I was?" They say, "Do you think you're a good footballer?" To me, and I say, "Doesn't matter what I think, mate. It's up to you. Do you think I was a good footballer?" I'm not about to tell you what I think I was, and I'm not about to tell you what I would like to be not known for. But I think, and this is a generic thing. I think it'd be nice to be known as a genuinely loyal friend of the people you were friends with, and that you did not dud or didn't dud people in life. Didn't dud people. You might have sent them up, and you might have taken the piss out of them, and you might have had arguments with them. But I don't think I ever dudded anyone for my own financial or personal gain. I know sounds a bit hokey, doesn't it? A bit hokey, a bit holier than thou. But I don't want to be known for anything. I just, whatever people think of me, I don't care what people think of me. I care what my friends think of me. My reputation is what people think I am. My character is what I really am. I know who I am. I don't care what people think of me. I honestly don't care criticism. People give it. I've been criticised the last week over something, I didn't bring it up, but you have a go at me and I think it's unfair. Don't worry, I'll have a go back at you. And people say, well, don't give those people oxygen, don't give them a platform. And I say, well, why not? Why not? I quite enjoy it. If you're going to belt me, please let me have a crack at belting you. If you give it, you got to take it.
Absolutely. Definitely. Nobody does that better than you, Sam, and I think that's why we all love you. I mean, when I say we all, I mean you're probably the most polarising man in this great city. But we, as in dos&D, we certainly love you. You probably don't know, but we look up to you. We have. A lot of people do.
Well, I don't want to be your role model, mate. I don't know.
Well, some areas, Sam, perhaps.
That's it.
Didn't have the footy talent, that's for sure. But honestly, this meant a lot for us to sit down with you, and thank you so much for having us in your studio. We really appreciate it, and mate, we just want to thank you.
Okay, well, you want me to stop this now, seeing as I'm in front of the panel? Righto, I'm going over to here now. If I press that, it'll stop.